there's been a bit of speculation regarding Nicolas Kuhn again. We talked about it earlier this week. Our information again from our transfer guru Scott Burns is that perhaps it's the agent trying to work his ticket a little bit.
Yeah, although I do think there is interest in Nicolas Kuhn. I think the stuff from Germany is pretty real, and I can understand why. He had a terrific Champions League campaign, and in more than one of those games it was against German opposition. There's no way he didn't catch the eye. German clubs are obviously very keen to promote German products and German youngsters, German players. Kuhn's one that they've allowed to kind of get away from them. It wouldn't surprise me at all if there was genuine desire to get him back. I think it's real. I think there is legitimate interest. I noticed this afternoon that Italian side Como have been credited with a big interest as well. I think Nicolas Kuhn's another that isn't long for these shows. Having said all that, I'm very conscious of the fact that you asked me for my gut on Greg Taylor last night, and I said my gut was telling me that I think Brendan Rodgers has worked a little bit of magic on him. I think that he's given him something to think about. I think that Greg Taylor, in ordinary circumstances, would probably have been away before now if it wasn't for the fact that Brendan Rodgers has been in his ear. Looks like Greg Taylor's off next week, doesn't it?
He must have watched the show and went, do you know what?
I can't stand this. Yeah.
I mean, first of all, on Kuhn, John says Kuhn has a lot of goals and assists, a lot to lose. Marzuno says his highlight reel from the first half of last season was pretty special. Look, if Celtic are to lose Kuhn, what do you see the price being? What do you see there?
Again, we're having the same discussion now. It's what anybody's willing to pay.
Well, what I was saying the other night, it was the night you went on. If Celtic got offered 15 million, personally, and Matt, for me, I would jump at that.
I would agree with you, and I think that's achievable. I think that around that fee is very much achievable for Celtic. But Celtic are masters of this, of wheeling and dealing in the transfer market. They're capable of pulling in massive fees. So you just don't know. And they've got a track record. They can point to it. They can point to the back catalogue and say, well, he went for 25. He's gone for 25. This is the price we sell it. That's. I don't know if you can apply that to individual players, but I think Celtic will certainly give it a go. So who knows? I think that the interest in Kuhn is legit. Yes, I think his agents are working away in the background. And do I think that he looked particularly delighted to be at Celtic after he went out the Champions League? No, and that would give me a question. That's why I've always thought that he might move on this summer, because Brendan Rodgers questioned the attitude of some of his players towards the end of last season. And if you notice, that was when Nicolas Kuhn dropped out of the starting 11. So for me, I'm not sure that he's shown Brendan Rodgers the sort of enthusiasm for the task that Brendan Rodgers demands of his players. I think if Celtic can make a quick turn on him, I think that's what will happen.
And here's the point, Scott, as well, Mark, saying Kuhn would be a miss, but the club specialises in recruiting replacements, like we're saying.
And wingers.
That's the model, really, isn't it?
That's the whole point. That's the way it has to be, Daniel. I mean, it's similar to even managers and coaches. Now, if you put a sporting director in place, then part of his job is to see around corners and see if players are leaving or managers might leave, they need to have the next guy lined up. That's the gig. And the best teams and the best clubs do that really, really well and really successfully. So I've no doubt Celtic will have a contingency plan already if Kuhn goes. I mean, I feel as if we've been saying this for ages right enough, but it looks as if Nygren, the Swedish winger, is going to come in. Certainly can play wide right. That deal should probably get done. Although, as I say, we've been expecting that for a couple of weeks now.
I know it's dragging on a bit.
Aye, but if Kuhn
I think there might be some work permit issues involved in that one, but I think, we started this week thinking it would be done before the end of this week.
Aye.
Still think that would be...
You still think it's going to get done?
Yeah,
aye. Yeah. And just quickly on Greg Taylor. Look, personally, I think it'd be a huge blow to Celtic if they lose Greg Taylor.
Well, I agree, and I've said it. I think he's the ideal man, and Brendan Rodgers, more importantly, than what you think of what I think, believe it or not. Brendan Rodgers sees him as the ideal backup to Kieran Tierney. And that, by the way, I'm sure that he didn't sit him down and say, Greg, I think you're the ideal backup to Kieran Tierney.
Aye.
I'm sure that he said to him, look, this position will need to be shared. The games can get shared throughout the course of a season. You're going to be a big contributor if you stay here. It does appear from what we're hearing this afternoon. Where's he going? He's got a medical next week.
PAOK, apparently.
PAOK.
Yeah, he's got to PAOK,
Yeah.
Should be I think it's a 3-year deal. I got kind of word today that was pretty much done. I think he's obviously had a lot to weigh up. Greg Taylor, I mean, aside for staying at Celtic, there was a lot of interest. Copenhagen, club in the MLS, interest down south as well. So
there was interest from Croatia as well, wasn't there, right at the start?
Yeah, Dinamo Zagreb, that's right. So, right. But no, it looks as if he's going to PAOK in Greece Super League. They'll win the Europa League next season. It's a big decision for him, big contract at 27. Especially if that offer to stay with Celtic was on the table, which we believe it was. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on over there. But just another Scot, want to go and try playing abroad. We've spoke about obviously the boys in Italy, Max Johnson going to Austria, Taylor's the next one. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes.
Mo says, like you were saying, Keith, Tierney will be injured. Greg Taylor would end up playing 40 games, which I mean isn't outlandish.
And it does give Celtic the issue that if he does move, and it seems that he is, then somebody else will need to come in, and somebody else will be coming in very much on the ticket of you'll be Kieran Tierney's understudy.
Aye, and our pal Gianni saying sun, sea, and sand. Can't blame him, but like both of you humour me here, right? Do you really think PAOK have offered them more money than Celtic?
Yeah,
think so. Aye?
Yeah,
okay.
That's kind of the way it works.
I thought maybe it'd be similar, but he's
always wanted to play for PAOK. He grew up a PAOK fan and all that.
Used to go them in Football Manager.
I tell you what, the one thing I would say is we've talked about leaving a club like Celtic and then going to a place where you're kind of looking about and shrugging your shoulders and saying, how did I end up here? And it doesn't thrill you the same way. It doesn't give you the same feeling going out on PAOK. I have never experienced an atmosphere anywhere in European football.
Really?
It is awesome.
That's interesting.
It's also terrifying.
Aye.
So if I wasn't having a very good game for PAOK, I'd be very concerned. But oh my God, it is astonishing. Astonishing the atmosphere that they, and by the way, they're in the ground 3 hours before kickoff. Wow. It is bedlam, lining the streets a mile outside the stadium. Talk about intimidation. Oh my God.
Fair play.
Yeah.
And as Scott says, it's good to see another Scot going abroad. Hopefully he does well.